Framing is a very useful but often overlooked skill that can really level up your abilities as an artist. In this video, I'm going to show you 4 ways that you can use it effectively, from the very simple to the more advanced. And at the end, I'll give you a good rule of thumb that you can use to make sure that you get it right every single time. Let me show you what I mean. So that we know what we're talking about, what exactly is framing? Well, when it comes to visual art, put simply, framing is using elements in the scene to create a frame around your main subject. It sounds easy enough, but implementing it skillfully is pretty tough to do. You can use all sorts of different elements to do it, but there's a lot more to it than just putting your subject in a square box, as I'll go on to show in this video. But before we do, I'd like to hear from you. What's the most interesting thing you've seen someone use to frame their subject in a photo or in film or whatever visual art it is? So a very important question to ask: why would you want to use a frame in the first place? The first reason, and probably the most simple reason, is to direct the viewer's eye to something you specifically want them to see. The absolute basic level use of framing a subject. You'll see this used very, very often in film and in photography to make sure that the viewer is left in no doubt about what they're supposed to be looking at. There's no reason in overcomplicating this. You can just put them in a square box, like a window or a frame of branches. It's very simple, but it's really effective. If you want somebody to know what they're supposed to be looking at, then use a frame and you can't go wrong. The second reason you would use a frame, and probably a bit more of an advanced skill, is to give context to your subject. Why are they in the situation that they are in? This is very commonly used when you want to tell a story without having to over-explain it. Just let the audience see what you want them to see. This is something I often use, particularly in my photography, so that I can establish where my subject is. If you just take a picture of a subject, that can still work as a good photo. It's very common. But if you want to show the viewer where your subject is and what's happening around them, then this is a really effective method of letting them know that without having to tell them about it. The third reason you might want to use a frame is actually to simplify your image. Now, this might not make a lot of sense. How can adding a frame simplify your image? Well, what this is really useful for is when you're taking pictures in very busy scenes. This is something that's used particularly in street photography or in films where there are a lot of characters in the scene, but you want them to be focused on just one person. You see, by using a frame, you're, once again, it's almost linked to the first one where you're directing the viewer's eye. But what this is that you cut out a lot of stuff by placing a frame in front of it. A foreground frame acts almost like a crop without having to be too close to your subject. You can cut out all the distractions from around the edge of a frame and make sure that your viewer is looking directly at what you want them to see. Remember that a simple image is a good image, and using a frame can really help you to accomplish that. Fourth reason, and one that some people love and some people hate, is to create depth. Now, shallow depth of field is something that is very often overused in photography and often on YouTube in videos as well. When somebody really tries to just destroy the background by it being too blurry, a lot of people don't actually like that. Some people think it looks cool, but personally I think it doesn't really add anything to the picture. You may as well just put somebody in front of a green screen and add the background in. Whereas when you use a frame that adds layers to your picture, then you can create a shallow depth of field that actually complements the subject. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. When you overdo a shallow depth of field, it can make your pictures look really quite amateurish. Whereas when you use a frame around your subject, so maybe a foreground frame and a background frame, you can complement your subject and make them stand out while also accomplishing all of the other points. And one particular genre where this doesn't really fit in is landscape photography. Now, let me know what you think. Do you think that shallow depth of field has any place in landscape photography? Personally, I have used it several times in my photos. Some people really aren't a fan of it. What do you think? So there's 4 reasons that you might want to use a frame, but how do you use a frame? Well, if you're just a beginner, don't overthink it. If you are looking too hard for a frame, then you'll probably find something that doesn't look very natural. Simply just look for a hole in a fence, a window, 2 poles, whatever. You can use almost anything as a frame as long as it doesn't distract from your subject. And this is the other main point about how to use a frame. One thing that you do not want to do with your frame is distract from your subject. As soon as your frame starts to become the subject rather than what you actually want to take a picture of, and then you've taken it too far. This is something I see happen all the time, where a frame obscures somebody's face or is like a really bright color compared to the subject that you want your viewer to see. Now, of course, you've always got artistic choice. You might want to do that as part of your photo. I'm not here to tell you that you can't do that. I'm just saying that if you're a beginner, watch out that your frame doesn't become the subject instead of what you actually want to take a picture of. A good question to ask when you're including a frame is, does this complement my subject or distract from them? If it complements them, it's good. If it distracts, it's bad. Here's a good rule of thumb to follow. A good image is as much about what you take away from it as what you add to it. So if you want to use a frame in your picture, ask, does this simplify my image? If you do that, you'll probably get it right almost 100% of the time. Of course, learning about this is a very small part of the process. You need to actually get out there and do it. But before you do, make sure you watch this video here. And at the end of that, let me know, did it work? I'll see you next time.